Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Uh, Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Sunildro L S Akoijam, Associate Professor, Department of Management, Northeastern Hill University, Meghalaya. Today, I'm going to talk about the topic on developing skills for writing a quality research paper. But before I proceed, I'd like to thank, first of all, the UGC HRDC Gujarat University for giving me this opportunity to deliver a session on this particular topic. I also like to thank Professor Jagdish Joshi, who is the professor and director of UGC HRDC Gujarat University, for inviting me for this particular session. Uh, Talking about the UGC HRDC Gujarat University, as everybody knows, it is one of the pioneer HRDC and which is ranked 15 all over India in terms of conducting several quality courses or training programs for the um, faculties and young researchers. So uh, I'm totally thrilled to give a talk on this particular session today. So let's start with our session. Before proceeding with the session, let me give you these are some of the discussion points and learning outcomes. Means these are the things that I'm going to discuss throughout this entire session. So the first one, I'll discuss on the types of research paper, and then I'll discuss about the elements of a research paper, and then I will also speak on the additional things that may be asked by a journal. And next, I will also discuss about guidelines for effective article writing for journal, and then the mistakes to avoid while writing a research paper. And lastly, I will also talk about some of the important tips for effective paper writing. Okay, so moving ahead, first of all, as we all are teachers and young researchers, so we know what research paper is. So let me not go into that much details, but an important thing, let me tell you about research paper. Research paper is a form of academic writing that has a theoretical and substantial information that has gone through the proper process of in-depth research. There are many young researchers and young faculties who actually who actually don't know the real purpose of research paper or real purpose of writing a research paper. So let me tell you that when a young researcher or young faculty writes a research paper, they think it from their own benefit perspective only. But let me tell you, it's not just the own benefit or the individual benefit that you are getting through a research paper that is published, but that research paper should have some theoretical and substantial information. That means your paper should have some significant contributions, okay, in extending the theory that has come up till date, and it should give up some new and significant information that adds value to the existing literature. Means while writing a research paper and when it is published, it is not only the individual paper writer that is getting benefited, but it's the entire stakeholders are getting benefit out of it. So while writing a paper, you should consider this important aspect, which many of the young faculties and young researchers do not give due importance. And it contains arguments and findings with significant evidence from a variety of supporting and reliable sources. As we all know, that whenever we write a paper, we always come out with certain findings which is based on some authenticated and reliable data. And for that purpose, the researcher has to take the due consideration or has to take the caution while collecting the data from reliable sources. And while writing a research paper, the most important thing you should remember is what topic you should choose. Means choosing the right topic is the most crucial paper in paper writing. And this is something that most of us know, since we all have certain, or at least we have few experience in terms of how to write a research paper. The next important thing while writing a research paper is that you should identify what type of research paper you are writing or you are about to write. There are so many confusion I have seen in among the young faculties and young researchers, that whenever they think of writing a research paper, they normally presume that there's only one type of research paper, and then accordingly they start writing about that. But they don't realize that there are different types of research paper, and each research paper type has a certain structure. that you are supposed to follow. And accordingly, once you identify the type of research paper, you are supposed to write a paper as per the accepted or established structure for each paper type, research paper type. Okay, so it's very important and it is very pertinent to understand what are the types of research paper that are normally accepted in the reputed journals today. So let me talk about some of these types of papers which are or articles which are published in the journals. In this particular slide, you can see is that on the left side, forget about this right side for time being. On the left side, I have categorized the types of paper on basis of certain colors. Okay, and this categorization is done on basis of the commonality of the paper published plus the level of difficulties or level of challenges that you may face while writing a paper. So on the left hand side of the first point, you can see that research paper or original research, which is the most commonly written paper which is published in journal. And this is uh, the most uh, commonly published, plus this is a type of paper which many young researchers consider as a paper. Means they presume research paper means this research paper or the original research paper. Okay, and this is most easy in terms of the level of the challenges you may face in terms of writing a paper. So this is the most common, and this is mostly written by the young faculties and researchers when they are in the early phase of the paper writing. Okay, and in this particular type of research paper, you are collecting certain data, either primary or secondary, and you are drawing certain findings and conclusion out of that, and that adds to the existing literature. Okay, so this is the first type of research paper, which is the most common, and comparatively, I must say, it is one of the easiest form of article or a paper that the researchers normally publish. Next, if we move further, you can see in the blue color of highlights that there are two categories, which review paper and a case study. These are comparatively more challenging if we compare it with the first type. Okay, and this paper can be written by someone or some researcher who have gained certain experience of writing a paper in a particular domain. So let me tell you about these two categories. What are they actually? Review paper. Review paper is a paper that comprehensively discuss about what are the various researches which have been conducted in a particular domain, and accordingly you identify the research gap and you also identify the future direction of research. Okay, and let me tell you, review paper is the paper which draws the maximum number of citation. But again, as I said, review paper is normally not targeted by the researchers who are at the early phases. Okay, for writing this kind of paper, you need to have a very thorough understanding in terms of the papers that or the researches that have been conducted in a particular domain. Okay, and talking about third, the case study. Case study is a type of paper, we can say article, which is very popular in the management and allied domains. Maybe in many of the discipline it may not be that much relevant, but slowly other disciplines have also started realizing the importance of case study. And in a case study, the researcher or the paper writing is talking about some dilemma or some problem that are normally faced by an individual or maybe by a company or by an organization. And by seeing or by analyzing that particular dilemma or the problem, you are able to understand or you are able to link that case study with a particular topic. Let's say a particular case study is written about the branding issues that are faced by a company. So after understanding that particular dilemma or the problem, you are able to relate that, okay, these are the challenges that a company may face or company is facing while branding their products. So case study has become very important. And let me tell you again that case study writing is not that easy. It is also relatively more challenging if we compare it with the original research paper. And in order to write a case study, you need to visit, you need to interact with the members of the organization. You need to talk with the individuals. You need to try to understand the dilemma from your own perspective. You have to go through a series of analysis or the thorough investigation of the dilemma that is faced by an individual or an organization. And but one good thing about case study is that case study is useful for using in different courses. Okay, for example, let's say some of the case studies which are written related to a particular subject, like let's say marketing, the HR or finance. It can be used in the lectures. Okay, or maybe it can be used for interaction while teaching a particular subject. So it is very useful in terms of not only in terms of research, but also in terms of using as a pedagogy for teaching within the class itself. Okay, and coming to next two, conceptual paper and perspective paper. These are the papers, I must say, are normally written by someone who has a rich experience in that particular domain. Okay, and it is and let me recommend that early researchers or young faculty should not try to write this kind of paper when they are in the early phase of their paper writing. Okay, so but once you have gained a good experience, once you have gained a thorough understanding of the researches that have been conducted in a particular domain, then you can try for this kind of papers. So let me tell you what these two types of paper mean, or these two types of paper are. First is conceptual paper. In the conceptual paper, the paper writer, what he is doing is that he is trying to bring in some new concept. He's trying to bring in some theory, some framework, in addition to what others have already come out. Okay, so in order to come out with that new concept or new theory, you need a lot many experience to propose that that concept or theory will be suitable or will be relevant in today's context. And accordingly, it is a very challenging, because that concept that you are coming out, that should be relevant in today's context, and it should be accepted by the people in that particular domain. Okay, so it is normally written by someone who has a rich experience, let's say 20 years, 30 years down the line. Okay, that who have published enough research paper in that particular domain, and he's one of the pioneer in that particular field. So this is the what we call as the conceptual paper. And coming to next, perspective paper. Again, similarly with the conceptual paper, perspective paper is normally written by someone who has a rich experience again. In the perspective paper, what you are writing is that you are writing your perspective on basis of the recent published article related to an issue. It means you are trying to give your own perspective. You are trying to give your viewpoint in terms of a recently published article. For example, let's say we all have encountered the COVID era, COVID phase for 2-3 years. So there are so many articles that came or that published in a journal. Okay, they talk a lot many in terms of the vaccine, in terms of the causes, in terms of diagnosis, or in terms of the ways how to overcome on that. Okay, so maybe you can come out with a perspective article referring to one of the widely published, let's say, article related to COVID. So in that line, you are putting forward your different perspective. Okay, so that kind of perspective that you put in the form of paper is what we call as the perspective article. Then, as I said, that in order to write a perspective article or perspective paper, you need to analyze all the recent papers that have been published, and accordingly, you have to see how you think differently from this published article. So, in order to have that kind of perspective, again, the researchers need to have many experience, and he should have a rich experience in that particular line. Okay, so these are the types of papers, okay, that are normally published in journal, and all these type of paper or article published in journal have certain points or certain marks as per the API which was introduced by the UGC. But leaving this, when we go to the right side, there are three more categories, which these are not actually the papers, but these types of articles doesn't carry any kind of points normally when we talk about calculation of API as per the UGC norms. But you need to understand these three types of articles also as to what are they, and what is the importance of this type of article that are being published in journals. Okay, the first one you see, short communication oblique result report oblique letter. These are a short-term report or a brief report, okay, related to is published recently, and maybe the editor feels that that findings of that article may be useful for different stakeholders. So maybe he needs to publish that in the form of a brief report, okay. So he can publish it in the category of the short communication, and it is basically very short in nature in terms of word counts or in terms of the content also, okay. So that those are the categories of the short communication or the report or letter, which you sometimes find in some of the journals. This type of articles is not normally published in all journals, okay, but in some journals you will find this kind of article also. Next is commentary. Commentary type of article is that type of article in which the researcher or the faculties, what they do, they try to give a comment on the some ongoing or very important issue which is going around. Okay, for example, let's say when the demonetization took place, there were so many people who were giving comments in terms of whether they are supporting or whether they are against the demonetization. So maybe someone can take up this issue called demonetization, and accordingly they can give their comments. Okay, so they can publish it in the form of commentary in journals. Okay, so maybe the readers, after reading that commentary, maybe they can gain the understanding of the how different people see the demonetization from their own perspective. Okay, normally, and again, it's a very brief type of article that is normally published under the category called commentary. And last but not least, book review. In this category of article, you are reviewing a book which is, let's say, widely accepted or quite popular in a particular domain. For example, let's say you are reviewing a book related to entrepreneurship, and while writing a book review, you are trying to see what are the positive things, what will be the positive outcomes of reading that book. Okay, and then you also try to identify some of the loopholes or some of the negative things or some of the things that are lacking in that particular book. Okay, so all those things you will highlight in this book review. Okay, so that whenever somebody reads your book review, they will understand whether reading that particular book, what are the certain outcomes that they can expect. Okay, so these are the three categories of article which are not normally a paper, I must say, but which are published in journals. Even though they may not be normally counted in terms of calculation of API as per the UGC, but if we see the impact, if we see the outcome or the benefits of this kind of articles, in many cases they provide a huge benefit, okay, to different stakeholders or different, let's say, different forms of readers. So these are some of the types of paper or articles normally published in journals. But before you start even writing, you have to see in which particular type or category your paper or article falls. Once you identify that accordingly you have to again see the structure that a particular research paper needs to have. Then after that, what you will do, you will restructure your article as per the format and as per the required elements if it is not in the particular structure. Okay, so this is the kind of prior important thing that you need to consider even before starting writing a paper. Okay, coming to next, when a researcher or when an individual thinks of writing a paper, and well, let's assume that they have identified the type also. Now you are about to understand what are different elements, what are the important things that you are supposed to include in that particular paper, and you need to understand that these are some of the important elements you have to include. And the next important thing is that within each element, what are the things that you are supposed to include under each element. This is one of the most common problem that is faced by many young researchers, because they know that these are the elements that they should include in the paper, yet they are not very clear in terms of what they actually write within each element. So first of all, let me show you what are the elements, then let me give you a brief understanding of what you are supposed to write within each element. So first of all, let us see. First thing is the title. Okay. Second thing, abstract. Third thing, keywords. then the introduction, then review of literature, and then theoretical concept or conceptual framework, if applicable, methodology, then findings, discussion, conclusion, then implication, acknowledgement, reference, and appendix. These are some of the elements that you are supposed to have in your paper. Now let's try to understand what actually you are supposed to write and within each element. Now coming to title. Title is the first thing that you are supposed to write in a paper. And many young researchers take the title for granted. But let me tell you, when a paper readers or when your readers, or let's say the reviewers or even editors try to evaluate your paper, first thing that goes into your mind is the title. Okay, so title is something which creates a first impression in the minds of the readers. Okay, so if the title is very attractive, title is very interesting, it looks interesting, then obviously it creates a kind of interest, and it creates that kind of motivation to read the paper further. So title, what kind of title that you should make? You see, select a title that is simple, attractive, and accurately reflects the investigation. Okay, one thing you should not forget is that whatever title that you are framing, it should reflect the work that you have done. Okay, and some of the phrases that you should avoid while framing the title, like investigation, study, novel, facade. These are the terms which you normally should avoid, because when you submit your paper in some of the premier journals, they take care of all these things. Okay, so you better try to avoid use of these words, because these are the things that is normally presumed, or these are the things that is implied while conducting a research. And avoid acronyms that are known only to specialized community. You see, when you use a word, a terminology in the title, you should be very cautious whether your target audience, target readers will be able to understand each term. Okay, so you should be avoiding any terms of any words that make create a kind of confusion, or maybe that many of your readers may not know. Okay, so my recommendation is make a title which is simple, attractive, okay, and try to create some sort of interest. Okay, so that whenever people reads your title, they should feel that yes, this title is something unique and different. So let's go ahead with reading the entire paper. Okay, after the title comes the abstract. An abstract, it is a summary of the body of information. It expresses the main claim and argument of a paper. Then again, another very common problem that the young researcher normally face is they know that abstract is an integral part of the paper, but they do not actually understand what are the certain things that they should write within that abstract. And we all know that abstract always has some word limits, maybe let's say 150 to 250, depending upon the journal to journal. But within that word limit, what are the important things that you are supposed to include that you should know? Otherwise, I have seen so many abstract where people write many things, but they miss the important things that are normally expected by the readers as well as the reviewers. So let's try to understand what are the things that you are supposed to write in the abstract section. Okay, you see, in the abstract, you are giving the answers to some of these questions. Okay, so let's see what are these questions. Why did you do this study or project? Okay, what did you do and how? Then what did you find? And lastly, what do your findings mean? These are some of the questions for, and the answers should be reflected in the abstract. Going further, you see, these are the important things that you should include in your abstract. Background, if applicable, I will not say that background is compulsory in all cases, but depending upon the nature and the type of your paper, you should try to include background wherever it is applicable. And then next important thing is you should mention what is the purpose, what is the objective of your paper or your research. And then you should also include few lines related to methods you have used in conducting that research. And then findings, what you got from your research. And most importantly, which many people miss, is the implications. In this subsection, you should try to write how your study is different from others and how your study will benefit different stakeholders. So few lines related to implication you should always include at the end of the abstract. And when people read these 2 3 lines related to implication, they will be able to judge whether your paper is having something new or something significant, okay, to extend the existing literature. Okay. And my simple recommendation while writing abstract is say keep it short and effective. And obviously it has word limits also. Be creative in generating curiosity. This is another very important thing in order to increase the readership, in order to increase the number of citations. Okay, so be creative in the way how you write the abstract, even though you include all these important elements. Okay, after abstract. Okay, but before going further, let me show you some samples of how an abstract looks like. If we see the types of the abstract that are normally accepted in the some reputed journals in today's time, there are 3 types of abstract that you will find in various journals. On the left hand side, if you see, this is a journal published by Science, okay, International Journal of Electronic Marketing and Retailing. When you see this abstract, you will find that abstract is normally written in the form of a paragraph, okay, and that too within the word limit. This is the first type of abstract. Going to second type, if you see the right hand side, you see this is a paper published in a journal published by Emerald. Okay, these are my own papers which are published in different journals. And if you see the structure of the second type of abstract, you can see that abstract within the abstract there are subsections which are there. Okay, like the purpose, design methodology approach, then findings, research implications, and then practical implications, originality. Okay, so this is the second type of abstract which is being implemented or accepted in the Emerald journals. Okay, so this is the second type of abstract. So in which journal you are submitting, accordingly you have to restructure your content. If you are submitting in a journal which accept the first type, then accordingly you have to restructure. Or maybe you are submitting in a journal which follows the second type, then you have to follow this structure. Coming to the third type, this is becoming a very important and very prominent in today's time, wherein you are not required to write the abstract in the words, but rather you can represent in the form of graphs. That's what we call as the graphical abstracts. Means, you see, in this particular example, abstract is written in the form of graphs, wherein if you see this abstract format, you will be able to understand that what are the things that the researcher has considered and what are the things he had checked in this particular research. So this is the third type of abstract, which may not be very common at this juncture, but it is becoming popular year by year. Okay, and in many of the reputed journals, I have seen that they have started accepting this form of abstract also. Okay, so these are the 3 types of abstract that you will find in some of the reputed journals. After abstract, next comes the keywords. Again, let me tell you, there are various misconceptions in terms of how to write keywords. Many people think that keyword means, okay, let's take 5-6 words from the paper without realizing whether those words which will be used as the keywords are the actual reflection of the work that you have done. Okay, so whatever words that you select, okay, and word limits again. Word limits is also there in terms of keyword. Normally, it varies from 3 to 6 words, and this should be a word that should be able to do justice in terms of what you have done. Okay, so whenever people read or they try to see what are the keywords, they will be able to understand what are the important things that may have been considered in the paper. So you should be very cautious in selecting the keywords that should be there in your paper. Now going to the next, introduction. Introduction seems to be a mere compilation of some of the information related to the topic, research area, but let me tell you, that is not the actual way of representing the introduction. And again, many researchers commit mistake while writing introduction. And when your readers or your reviewers read your paper, they start with the introductions. Okay, after that, all those title, abstract, and all. But your abstract should be able to give the justification, first of all background, and then justification of why there is a need of such kind of study. So if they are justified, or if they are convinced with the way how you are explaining that your paper will have some value, then it will create some sense of curiosity and interest in reading your paper further. So introduction is not a mere compilation of certain information related to your topic or maybe research area, but rather you should know some of the important things that you should be including while writing a paper. So the primary purpose of introduction is to frame the papers for its readers. Okay, it should provide a brief description of the topic, then present relevant background or contextual material, depending upon the type of research to research. In some cases, wherein you as a researcher is required to provide some sort of background in order to make your readers well acquainted with the topic or the domain. So in some cases, if required, you have to bring in that background and contextual material also. And most important thing while writing introduction is that you should give the justification as to why it is worth researching or why it could be found interesting. This is very important thing that you should never miss while writing introduction. And then further, some of the things related to introduction, that define terms or concept when necessary, explain the focus of the paper and specific purpose, to define the research questions of the study and overview of the rest of the paper. Okay? So these are some of the general things that you normally know, and these are the things that you should include in the introduction. So let me not get into that much details, since these are some of the general things that many researchers normally know. Okay, now going further, review of literature. Again, a common mistake and misconception about review of literature is that many researchers feel that review of literature means compilation of previous studies. But let me tell you, it is not just the mere compilation of the previous researches. But after compilation, what you have to do, you have to analyze, you have to compare several researches, and you have to see what are the common things, what are the different things, and you should try to bring out the research gap, the research that you are proposing, that you are planning, whether it will have certain value or not. It will be derived from the review of literature. When we talk about the review of literature, you should be able to include all the significant studies that have been conducted in a particular topic or maybe domain. Okay, so review of literature, when you conduct, you should be exhaustive. Exhaustive in the sense that you should not miss out any important or significant study related to the field. Else, you may miss out some of the important findings, which you may feel may be new, but it has been, or it may be something which others had already conducted. Okay, so within the review of literature, what's the present state of knowledge regarding the topic under consideration? Then how are the studies related to one being proposed? And what is the quality of the studies review? And one more thing, let me tell you here, when you conduct review of literature, when you try to find out the researches that have been conducted in a particular domain, you need to refer to some of the reputed journals in the particular domain. For example, let's say you are conducting a research related to social entrepreneurship. So you should, as a researcher, you should know what are some of the top journals that publish papers related to social entrepreneurship. So you should search the paper from those journals. You should not miss out any of the important papers published in those reputed journals. Okay, so accordingly, you have to analyze those papers, and you should be able to identify the research gap for your study. Okay, and how will the research proposed study contribute to the existing literature? And then you have to justify, after identifying the research gap, that how your study or proposed study will have or will bring in new value or added value to the literature. Okay, and review of literature, when we talk about literature survey, it takes huge amount of time. Okay, you need to give ample time, you need to give adequate time to yourself to collect and then analyze and to understand the whole thing related to a particular topic, and then accordingly you should be able to justify, okay, the literature gap, or let's say the research gap, and you should be able to justify uh, what value that your proposed study will bring in. So all these things should be reflected in the review of literature. Okay, and then you say is to summarize what conclusion have been reached in the research literature and whether different writers agree or not. To highlight main issues and controversies around the problem, and most importantly, to formulate the hypothesis from the literature if applicable. Okay, so we often talk about the hypothesis and testing of hypothesis, but you should also understand from where those hypotheses are drawn, or from where those hypotheses are formulated. It is drawn or formulated through or from the review of literature. Okay, it is not drawn from any other. Okay, but it should come from review of literature. Means whatever hypothesis that you are formulating or you are proposing for a study, it should be supported by the literature. Okay, so you can understand the importance of review of literature in a paper. And then comes the third thing: theoretical virtues, or theoretical and conceptual framework. These are the two terms which many consider as a similar or the same. Okay, but let me tell you, these two terms are not same. Technically, there is a difference between these two terms. Okay, so let me tell you what are these differences. Theoretical framework in a study is based on an existing theory or theories. Means, let's assume that you are conducting research, or you are writing a paper related to a motivation, for example. Then you are finding out some of the theories related to motivation. Okay, then accordingly you are adopting the framework given by a model. For example, Maslow's theory of motivation. Okay, so maybe your study will be based on what the Maslow said in his particular model or framework. Okay, so you are using that theory as a framework for conducting a research. That's what we call as a theoretical framework. Coming to the conceptual framework, here you are referring to a theory or maybe even a concept, but you are developing a framework on your own, on basis of which you will conduct your research. Okay, that's what we call as the conceptual framework. Okay, and one more concept that has come in this line is the research model, which is not included in the slide, but let me tell you a brief about this research model. Research model is a more refined version of conceptual framework. Okay, and in today's time, when you see many of the reputed papers published in reputed journal, you will find that they have included research model or proposed research model. This model is nothing but a framework which they have used, and in that model you will find what are the things that the researcher has considered, and what are the hypotheses that they have proposed, and what are the tests that they have done, and the particular direction in which they will work. So research model is becoming very prominent and very, very important in today's time, and you will find in many of the reputed journals also, wherein they ask to include research model. Again, research model is a more refined version of conceptual framework that clearly shows what are the variables that they have considered and what type of tests that they are going to conduct, what type of hypothesis. Okay, whether they are trying to find out relationship between two variables, three variables, or whether they are trying to find out the mediating and moderating effect, all will be reflected very clearly in the research model. Okay, so there is all about theoretical and conceptual framework and the research model. After that, research model or research methodology. Research methodology, and in this particular section, you should be very clear in terms of what you have or how you have conducted your research. Okay, to demonstrate that you are aware of the research method used to study this topic. So whatever methods that you have adopted for conducting the research, it should be very clearly written under this particular section. Okay, for example, let's say that you have used the primary data in your research, then what type of primary, how you have collected, who are your respondent, what is the sample size, and what is the sampling technique. Everything should be written in a very, very clear manner. Okay, and whenever reviewer reads your methodology section, research methodology section, they will be clear in terms of how you have done. But in many cases, the way how research methodology is written, it is unclear. So the reviewers, what they have a doubt. If the research methodology is unclear, then how they have conducted the research. So it gives a very bad impression in terms of evaluating the research paper. Okay, so whatever you have used, whatever method, techniques that you have used, you should write in a very clear manner, and not only clear manner, but you should also uh, adopt and use the right method or maybe the technique that is relevant. For example, let's say that someone has used convenience sampling technique, then you should justify why you have used the convenience sampling method in your case. So you have to give justification of that. So once justification is given very clearly, then the reviewers will also understand. Your readers will also understand that okay, yes, convenience sampling is the most feasible, most relevant type of sampling in this case. Okay, and then see, to justify the research method and approach you have taken or your study means whatever methods or techniques you use, that's okay, but you have to justify. You have to give the rationality of using those things, and that should be clearly reflected in your research methodology section. Okay, similarly, to explain and justify the method of data collection and analysis. Let's say that you have used the interview method for data collection. So you have to justify why you feel or why you think that collection of data through interview method is the most appropriate or most feasible in your case. Okay? If the research methodology section is very clear, then it reflects the strength of your paper and your research also. Now coming to the next, the findings and results. In this section, what you're writing is you're presenting the findings of your research, and that too in an orderly manner using heading plan in your methodology or heading arising from patterns found in the research. Means you're presenting your findings in such a logical sequence, such an orderly manner that when the readers or maybe let's say the reviewers reads, they will be able to relate those findings, okay, related to your methodology and related to your objectives. Okay, it should be in a very logical sequence and very logical manner. And you see, to present the results effectively, you may use chart, table, etc., wherever applicable. And in order to present your findings in a more effective manner, you can use the help of the chart, table, or graphs, or maybe any other tools which are abundantly available in today's time. Okay, so the basic objective should be that you should be able to present our data in such a manner that the readers or reviewers find it easy to understand what findings you are bringing in through your research. Okay, then after that comes the discussion part. Here, this particular section is very, very crucial in terms of how you see the result, how you analyze, and how you try to justify that your findings is somehow different from others. Okay, so in this section, you see you're commenting on the trends, findings, and so your understanding of what your data suggests. It's not simply saying that okay, your figures after calculation comes 2.5. Okay, then when you talk about discussion here, you have to explain what that 2.5 indicates and whether that 2.5 is different or similar from the previous studies. Okay, and one very important thing, let me tell you here, that in today's time when you write a discussion, you always have to compare your findings with the previous research findings. You have to tell whether your research is similar or different. If similar, then in what line, and if it is different, then how is it different? Okay, and what are the reasons for that differences? You should always compare. This will strengthen your discussion. This will strengthen your findings of your paper. Okay, and very important thing, to highlight anything unexpected that come up. Means if you are coming out with certain finding that is totally unexpected, that will be the most important value that your research paper will bring in. So you have to highlight those unexpected findings if it is coming up. Okay, after that you see conclusion. When we talk about conclusion is not just about again summarizing some of the points from different elements at the end. No, you also need to know what or the way how you should write a conclusion. Okay, to sum up your findings and highlight the significance of the outcomes of the study. Okay, means there may be so many findings in your paper, but you have to identify some of the important findings, and you have to summarize. You have to sum up. Okay, and then you also have to highlight the significance of the outcome of your study. Another very important thing that should be reflected in the conclusion. And as I said, the conclusion is not merely a summary of your points or a restatement of your research problem, but a synthesis of the key point. Means you have to have a proper synthesis or a synchronization of some of the key points that you have come out through your research. And in some of the papers, you are including limitations of your study, and you are also highlighting some of the future direction of research, but this is not compulsory. And if we see many of the reputed journals in today's time, you will find that limitation and future direction of research are normally segregated from the conclusion. They have a separate section, and they include that. Okay, or in some journals, you will also find that this limitation and future direction of research is included or clubbed with the conclusion. Either or it will do, but it depends upon the requirement of the journal. After conclusion, a very, very important section that many young researchers normally don't understand the need of this section. But reputed journals give due focus or due importance on this part. Because in this particular section, you are talking about how your study or how your findings will be beneficial for different stakeholders. Okay, and this is very important to justify, to strengthen your paper, that your paper is somehow different, or you are bringing out with some significant findings which is different from others. Okay, and within under this particular section's implications, there are three types of implications that the journal normally asks. Okay, they are theoretical, practical, and social implications. In the theoretical implication, you should include whether your study has something that adds to the existing theory, or you have come out with a finding that may be an extension to the existing theory. But let me tell you, theoretical implication may not be there in all your research, in all paper. But whenever there is some findings that will act as an extension or add a value to the existing theory, that should be reflected in the theoretical implication. Okay, and then coming to the next implication, practical implication. In the practical implication, you are basically talking about how different stakeholders will get benefit from your research. For example, let's say you are conducting a research related to entrepreneurship, then definitely you have to tell how your findings of your paper will benefit to the entrepreneurs, or maybe any other who are engaged in the entrepreneurship process. So you have to tell. Last but not the least, you see social implications. Particular research is conducted with the basic purpose of fulfilling certain objective, but that research should bring some benefits to the society as well. Okay, so in the social implications, you have to tell how your research or findings will benefit the society at large. Society is an integral part of your research also, indirectly or directly. They are using, researchers are using the resources of society. So society also expects that they should get something in return. So you have to tell in the implication or social implication that how your study or findings will be beneficial to the society. And it has become a very pertinent section in today's time. The journal normally asks, what is the social implications? How will the society get benefit out of your research? So this particular section, implications, has become very, very important in order to justify the novelty, in order to justify the significance of your study. Okay. After that, acknowledgement. It may not be very important, but many of the journals has made it mandatory also, wherein in the process of your research, if you have taken the support from anyone, okay, from either an individual or either an organization or either a sponsoring agency, then you should acknowledge that, because researches could not be completed without their support. So if you have taken any support, assistance from someone, you should reflect that in the form of acknowledgement at the end of the paper. Okay, and this has become a mandatory also in many of the reputed journals. So you should include this part element. Next is the reference. We all know what's the reference. So the only thing that you have to take care is you have to identify what type of referencing style is accepted in a particular journal. And then accordingly, you have to restructure your reference as per that particular accepted referencing style. And in order to make your referencing more easier, nowadays lot many referencing software tools are available. Okay, I mentioned here two types of two, or let's say two softwares which are very common: Mendeley and Zotero. You can use any of this software to help you in referencing. Okay. Next is appendix. Appendix is not compulsory, but in some case wherein you feel that any document, any pictures, any graph or chart or any data which you have not uh, enclosed in any other elements that we discuss, then, and if you feel that those this document or pictures or maybe data will be important in evaluation of your paper, then you can include all those things under the appendix section. Okay, like the questionnaire, surveys, instrument you use, like the report, policy, historical documents. Okay, so these are some of the examples which you, if you feel that those will be important in evaluating your paper, then you can include all those things under the section called appendix. But again, this is not compulsory, but depending upon your requirement, you can include under the appendix. So these are some of the elements that you should include in a paper, or maybe while writing a paper and for submission into a journal. But other than this, there are some of the additional things which the, let's say, the editor or the journal may ask to enclose while submitting a paper. Then some are mandatory, but some may not be mandatory also, depending upon the journal to journal. But let's try to understand some of these additional things which the journal may ask you to enclose along with your paper. Okay, see, cover letter. It is not mandatory to submit a paper with a cover letter, but my humble suggestion to all of you is that you should always include a cover letter while submitting a paper. It gives a very professional impression of submitting a paper. And cover letter is hardly the 2-3 lines for a kind of letter through which you are communicating to the editor that, okay, you are submitting a paper entitled this in the in the esteemed journal, and then maybe one or two more lines, okay, from your end. That is the cover letter. It is not mandatory, but if you include it, it always gives a kind of a positive impression in the minds of the editor. Okay, next is the declaration from the authors in terms of originality, paper not submitted to other journals. So some journals ask this also, that you should declare that your paper or your research is original and you have not submitted to any other journal. This kind of declaration requirements may be there in the different journals. So if that is there, then you have to enclose this also in your paper. Okay, and then conflict of interest statement. This has become very prominent also in today's time, wherein there are several ethical issues that have come up because of which the journal editor want the authors to include this section also, conflict of interest section. It means if there is a possibility of any conflict in the future related to your study, then if it is there, then you have to declare here under this section, okay, conflict of interest section. Then author's profile as case along with photo. It is not mandatory, but if some journal asks, then you have to include your brief profile, maybe within 100 words, 150 words, along with your photo. Okay, and then next is the APC, article processing charts, mainly for open access. Okay, maybe while submitting a paper, they may provide some option also, that whether you will like to go for the open access, or maybe you will go to the regular submission. So accordingly, you have to pay the APC later on if you go for the open access. So these are some of the important elements. Plus, I must say some of the additional things that you need to understand, and then you need to consider while submitting a paper in a particular journal. Okay. Now coming to some of the guidelines as to how to write an effective journal article. Okay. whatever elements that we have discussed, those are technical aspect, but these are some of the uh, uh, factors. If you considered, it will enhance the quality of your research article. So first point, communicate effectively. The way how you write your paper, you should do it effectively. Okay, means you should write in such a way that your reviewers and let's say that your target audience will be able to understand properly, or maybe in the right direction. Okay, you don't need to write a very hi-fi English or very technical words. Okay, but you should write in such a manner that it should be understood by the reviewers and your target audience effectively. Okay, and then realize that journal editors and peer reviewers reading your work want you to do well. Means there are also some standards which are accepted in terms of writing. Okay, so at least you should try to maintain that standard. You are writing a paper for publishing in a journal, so the editor and the reviewers also expect that at least you write in such a manner that is uh, accepted, or maybe that follows a certain standard. Okay, and then proper synthesis of different elements of a paper. Another very common mistake that many of the young researchers face is they have a lot many information, but they don't know, or they lack in terms of understanding how to synchronize different informations or different elements. Okay, so proper synchronization, proper synthesis of different elements is very, very essential. Means the proper linkage should be there between the different elements that you will include in a research paper. And another very important query and question that I got normally from the young researcher is that how to select a journal. Okay, how to select a journal. I have a paper, I have done research, I'm ready with a paper, but how will I know that which journal will be the most suitable for my paper? So for that purpose, see, some of the reputed publishers have come out with a solution in the form of journal finder. Means these are some of the journal finder platform or website which are introduced by the reputed publisher all over the world. And when you click any one of this, it will direct you to the website wherein you have to insert your title, plus you have to insert your abstract plus keywords, and then accordingly they will give a suggestion, or they will give a recommendation in terms of which journal will be suitable for your case. For example, let's say that I have done research and I have written a paper related to branding. Then maybe when I insert my title and then the abstract and the keywords in any one of this platform, and I click search, then they will come out with at least 6-7 journals that may be suitable or relevant for my paper. So these platforms are very useful in whenever you get any confusion that in which particular journal you should publish. Okay, the first one is for Elsevier, second you see is for Keller and Francis, then third is a Springer. Likewise, you will find many other journal finder platform also for different journals or reputed publisher. And then another important thing that you should that you should consider, or you should know while selecting the journal. There are so many journals. There are thousands of journals in any particular field. So which journal I should consider a quality journal for submitting my paper. These are some of the criteria that will help in judging the quality of a research journal. Okay, but it all depends upon your requirement. It all depends upon what particular factors you consider as the priority. But these are some of the factors which you can consider for finalizing the quality, or for determining the quality of journal in which you may like to submit. Okay, first is the reputation of the journal or the editorial board member, like Journal of Marketing, Tourism Management. Since you are related to a particular field or domain, you should be knowing who are the pioneer researchers in your respective field or discipline. Accordingly, any journal having those reputed or pioneer people in there as an editor or maybe editorial board member, then you can rely on those journal. Okay, for example, let's say the Philip Kotler. Okay, and then let's say Abraham Koji, or maybe any other pioneer people in a related discipline. In your own discipline, you should be knowing and you should know, and then accordingly you can see if any journal any journal has these people in their board, then definitely you can rely on those journal. Second criteria is the indexing, another very important thing in today's time. You have to see in which database your the particular journal is indexed, either Scopus or Web of Science Index. Scopus is the largest database, so people think that those journals which, uh, which are indexed in Scopus, that journals are good. And then similarly, Web of Science. Okay, so you can decide on basis of indexing also. And third important thing is the impact factor. Okay, you must be knowing the concept of impact factor. So let me not discuss here, but when you decide the quality of journal, you consider this as an important point. And impact factor, here we are talking about impact factor that is calculated by the Web of Science company, or maybe now we call it the Clarivate. Okay, so there may be so many agencies which are giving the impact factor, but when we talk about impact factor here, we're talking about the impact factor given by the Web of Science company, or let's say the Clarivate company. Okay, more is the impact factor, better is the quality of journal we normally presume. Okay, so either you go as per the impact factor, or maybe ABDC ranking, another important aspect which is very relevant related to the management discipline. And the premier institutions like IIMs, they basically judge the quality of journal on basis of ABDC ranking. Okay, ABDC ranking is the parameter introduced by the Australian Business Dean Council, and they rank the journal in terms of A, B, C. Okay, those journals which are in the rank A, they are the best journal in the discipline. Then comes the next level B, and then comes the C. Similarly, Scopus also, they have come out in the form of four quadrant, like the Scopus Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Q1 are the best 25% of journal, then subsequently Q2, Q3, Q4. So either on basis of this parameter also you can judge the quality of the journal. And then peer review process. Many times, see, depending upon your requirement, you can also see the peer review process, I mean, how much time it is taking normally on average by a journal. And when you visit any one of the reputed journals published by reputed publisher, they will normally mention, okay, the average time taken for the first decision, second decision, and then till publication, and then once accepted, after that how much time it takes for publication. So when you see all those peer review process and the average time taken to publish the article, you can accordingly decide, okay, that okay, I can wait for 1 year, 2 year, or maybe you don't have that much time to wait for that, then you can search for other alternatives. So peer review process is another important criteria that you can consider. And then frequency of publication, another very important thing which is relevant particularly in the India's context, wherein we want our paper to be published faster. So maybe you can check the frequency, whether it is published monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, or half yearly, or maybe once in a year. So accordingly you can decide also. Then requirement of the journal. When you are ready with the paper, when you start searching the journal, then you also try to compare how your paper has shaped up and the requirement of the journal. For example, let's say that your paper has come to a word limit of 10,000. Then you have to see a journal which is accepting the word limit till 10,000. Then types of paper, as we already discussed. Suppose you are writing, let's say, the conceptual paper or a case study. Then you have to see in which journal they are accepting this kind of paper. So accordingly, you have to select the journals which will suit your paper. Then other additional benefits like the open access. Those people who are willing to publish their paper in open access, then maybe they have to see which journals are offering this kind of additional benefits also. So these are some of the criteria or the factors that you can consider while judging the quality of the journal, or maybe while making a decision in terms of where I should submit my journal. Okay, but as I said, it all depends upon your requirement as an author. It all depends on how you judge all these different factors in determining the quality of the journal. Okay, somebody may give importance on the indexing, somebody may give importance on the let's say the editorial board member or maybe editor. Okay, likewise you have to see accordingly as per your requirement. And few more guidelines, okay, which you if you follow, then definitely it will help you in enhancing the quality. Okay, when you don't have much experience in terms of how to structure the article or your paper in a journal, then the easiest way is try to find out a sample article which is available in a particular journal website. Okay, that's why use sample article for the reference. If you see that the sample article, then accordingly it will become easier for you to restructure your paper as per the requirement of that journal. Okay, every journal, every reputed journal, they will always have some sample article on their website. The only thing that you have to do is you have to find out, and then you have to see, and then accordingly you have to restructure your paper accordingly. Okay, read and follow journal's instruction to authors. This again very very important thing when you submit your paper in a reputed journals. You will find author's guideline. You have to read the author's guidelines very very carefully, because those reputed journals, they are very strict in terms of whether the paper is structured as per their guidelines or not. You may have very good paper, but you have not structured as per the guidelines, they will straight away reject your paper. Okay, so they basically check all those technical things as per their guidelines very minutely. So you have to take care of this important aspect. That's why I always recommend that you always try to read the journals, or you can say the author's guidelines of the journal very thoroughly. And another important thing is follow the accepted referencing style. As I said, every journal has certain referencing style which they accept in their journal. So you have to identify that, and then accordingly you have to restructure your referencing, like APA, Howard style, MLA, IEEE. Okay, any type of referencing style which is accepted by journal, accordingly you have to follow that. Then, in case you got a comment and you are asked to revise the paper, you are supposed to take the comments from reviewers as constructive criticism. There are many cases wherein you will accept the comment, and there may be some cases wherein you are not accepting or you are not agreeing to the comment. But you should always be polite in approach. If you are agreeing to some of the comments, then you try to rectify accordingly. But in case if you are not accepting the comments or the arguments which is put forward by reviewers, then also you should be polite, or you should be very formal and very professional in terms of how to counter. Okay, so very politely you have to say that, okay sir, I don't agree to your this argument, or maybe let's say the comment, because you have to give the reasons. You have to give the reasons, or you have to put forward the rationality of why you are not supporting the argument. Okay, but you have to do it in a very polite manner. You have to do it in a very professional manner. If you do that, then the chances of being acceptance after revision will be very high. Okay, and let me tell you one more thing here, that when you get certain comments for revision, okay, then journals, or we can say reputed journals, are very particular in terms of how you address each comment. So suppose you get 5 comments and you are asked to revise your paper, then against each comment what you have done in the revised paper, you have to tell very explicitly. You have to give the rationality as to what and why you have done the revision as per the comments. So whenever the revised paper is sent to the reviewers, again they will come to know whether you have done or you have addressed those comments in a proper manner or not. And if they feel so, then definitely the chances of the acceptance of your paper will be very high. So there is a way of dealing with this kind of revisions also. Okay, and another thing is the maintain ethics in writing. Everybody knows the importance or the relevance of ethics in writing. Okay, so let me not explain or go into details about ethics, but wherever possible, you should always maintain ethics while writing. Suppose you have referred to some of the findings of a previous study, then you should use a citation. You should give a reference at the end also, that okay, this statement or that statement you have taken it from a study by Mr. X, Mr. Y. Okay, there's one example of ethics while writing. Now coming to some of the mistakes that you should avoid while writing a paper. First is illogical sequence of data presentation. There may be so many data, but you should present those data in such a sequence and order that it makes sense in terms of understanding. And it should present the data in a sequence as per the requirement and as per the objective of your research. Okay, but if you go your important data in such a manner that it's not in a sequence or it is not in the logical way, then definitely it will create some kind of confusion also. So this is the first mistake you should avoid: illogical sequence of data presentation. Okay, next is inaccurate data. When you are coming out with certain findings on basis of data, always it should be backed by the accurate data. You should never come out with inaccurate data. Then incomplete data. Okay, similarly, incomplete data. Whatever data that you are presenting, try to come out with the complete data, so that whenever you draw some kind of inference, okay, you draw some kind of a conclusion from those data, it should have some meaning. It should have some value. But if it is incomplete data, that drawing conclusion, drawing inference will not make any sense. Okay, then the repetition of data. This is something that you should avoid. Okay, and there are many times when the young researchers, they keep on repeating the data at the different elements. This kind of thing you should avoid. Okay, so these are some of the important mistakes that you should avoid while writing a paper, because you always have to remember that the editor and the reviewers are the experienced people and they know everything in terms of how to write a paper. So they consider all these mistakes, okay, while evaluating your paper for accepting in a particular journal. So these are the common mistakes that you should avoid. Then lack of linkage between different elements of paper. As we discussed earlier also, you may have so many information, you may have so many data, but proper synchronization, proper linkage of different elements is very, very important. Means when we talk about introduction and then review literature, then we discuss so many things what to include in the element. Then the synchronization of the information included in the introduction and the information in the literature review, for example, there should be a proper linkage or synchronization that should be there. If it is not, then it creates a kind of confusion, or maybe many a times when the reader reads it, they may not be able to understand also. Okay, so that should not be there. Lack of linkage should not be there. And inappropriate presentation of data, overuse and abuse of tables and figures. Many times I have seen, as a reviewer of many reputed journals, we have seen that there are so many papers wherein that paper is bombarded with so many tables and figures, wherein they have used 10 tables, 10 figures, wherein in some cases I find that some of the tables can be clubbed together in a very productive or very effective manner. Means 5 tables they have used, but 5 tables can be clubbed and made under one table only. So maybe in that kind of cases, maybe you have to take care. You have to check whether you are overusing or abusing of tables and figures. Okay, you should include only that much which is required. No extra, no irrelevant information or maybe tables or figures you should not include in your paper. Now coming to the last part, tips for effective paper writing. These are some of the common tips, okay, which may not be very technical, but these are some of the small things. If you consider, then definitely it will help you in enhancing the quality of paper to some extent. Okay, write simply, clearly, and concisely. Many people think that if you write a very high-fi language or a very technical language, maybe the acceptance probability will be high, but it is not the case. Okay, whatever way how you're writing your paper, it should be simple, it should be clear, and it should be concise. Means the way how you're writing, your audience, the reviewer or the editor should be able to understand. That much only you have to take care. And use common words. Always go for those words which are understood by all your target audience. Okay, then follow instructions. Okay, regarding structure, as I said, go for the author's guidelines of a journal. Then accordingly you structure, and then use subheadings to guide the readers. Okay, in many of the journals, I have seen that they ask the authors to go for heading and subheading, like one introduction, two review of literature, three research methods, like that, and then under each section, then maybe subsection or subheading will come. So accordingly, when you write a paper in such a manner, then definitely it becomes easier for the reader to relate to. Okay, one subsection is related to what particular section, so it doesn't create any kind of misunderstanding or confusion among the readers. And then organize information carefully at all levels. So you should be very careful in terms of how you are arranging your information in such a manner that it creates a kind of logical sequence and proper linkage is there, so that when the readers read it, they understand things very easily. Next, provide overviews before details. Okay, means when you before you go into details, you should always try to give overview of what you are going to discuss in details. Then avoid very long paragraphs. I have seen in many papers wherein the paragraphs and the length of the paragraphs are very uneven. Just one recommendation from my side is that you should always try to have the uniformity in terms of the paragraph. Let's say, for example, in the first paragraph of the introduction, let's say it's a coming 7-8 sentence. In the second paragraph, it's coming 3-4 only. So it looks very uneven. So better try to have uniformity in terms of paragraphs and avoid long paragraphs. Paragraph coming in the 1 page, 1.5 page, you better try to avoid that. Similarly, avoid very long sentences. Okay, very long sentences create confusion all the time. Okay, so better try to stick to a short sentences, so that when the readers read it, it becomes easy for them to understand. Then define terms that might be unfamiliar to the readers. If you feel that introducing a term is a must at some point or some element, but that term may not be very familiar or very, let's say, that easier for the readers to understand, then try to define that particular term, so that your readers find it easier to understand your paper. Then remember to define acronyms. Okay. Then avoid the use of passive voice and write in the first sentence, first portion. It means basically the language or the way how you are writing your paper, always you should write in the active voice. Avoid use of passive voice. And normally when you write in the first person, either I or we. But normally I is something which we do not prefer in many of the journals, but better we can write we. So these are some of the small tips which if you consider, if you take care of while writing a paper, definitely the outcome of those paper will be good. And definitely if you submit the paper in a journal, maybe the chances or the probability of acceptance will be relatively higher. Okay, so these are some of the important things that I want to discuss while developing the skills required for writing a quality paper in the reputed journals. So that's all from my side. Thank you, everyone.